Shubnam. I hope you're having a great Christmas break. Hope you're enjoying your Christmas with your family. Happy New Year's. Before I start, I think I just wanted to express my gratitude and thanks for how incredibly knowledgeable this class was, and for the environment that you fostered in this class, and how welcoming it was, and how engaging this entire course was. To begin, I think one thing that I'd kind of share with others about democracy, especially in the context of the United States, I think oftentimes we imagine democracy to be a forbearance, to be imprinted in our DNA, and really the thought of democracy in US are kind of synonyms to us, and the thought of democracy not existing in the US is incredibly implausible, but the reality is that it is possible, and the fact that we lack the imagination to imagine the US without it is detrimental. It's oftentimes like what happened with the 2020 elections and then Trump. Democracy is in peril, and yet we fail to see it just because we can't imagine the US without it. So democracy's progression and maintenance is not a guarantee, and in fact, democracy requires a lot of guardrails, a lot of monitoring, a lot of care, a lot of intentional labor to ensure its progression. And next I'd speak to the definition of democracy itself. I know there's a lot of contentious debate about what exactly is a democracy, but I know one dominant definition kind of ascribes democracy as or just highlights the existence of reoccurring elections, and I'd say that that's one definition which I personally would not use myself, just because there is existence for elections to be undemocratic, for them to be rigged, for candidates to just meddle in democracies and to pull strings to make either their winning guaranteed or more plausible. And I think for me, I define democracy as one, yes, the existence of fair and democratic elections, and to that I'd say just simply the allowance for constituents and citizens to keep their elected officials accountable, and with that I'd say that comes with like a pluralistic media, also the allowance of opposition to exist, and I think last thing I'd say is that we are currently living, unfortunately, in a world with democracies in peril, and we're experiencing a wave of word is always so hard for me to say, authoritarianization. I hope I'm saying that right. Democracies are failing and faulting globally, and we're living in a very contentious and really insidious period for democracy. And I think one more thing I'd add is that we often imagine democracy to be a binary. It's either it's a democracy or it's an autocracy. But really, what kind of can act as guardrails against democratic countries backsliding, entering autocracies is kind of using those terms of like backsliding or eroding, because rather than like democracy and authoritarianism being placed in like a dichotomy, we make it so it's a spectrum. So democracy isn't necessarily in peril only when autocratic leaders are storming capitals and effectively ending the rule and the power of the judiciary and the legislative branch. But democracy can also be in peril when leaders are making insidious changes to ensure that they are amassing their power, whether that's like through autocratic legalism and slowly changing the constitution to, I don't know, like increase the limits of their term, or to ensure that they have power to choose certain judges and to influence decisions in the judiciary branch, or to pass certain laws. It's yeah, there. When we imagine democracy to be on a spectrum, that means that there is things that we can do to ensure that when leaders are doing these incremental changes, that we don't wait until the last minute to kind of intervene, but that we are keeping them in check in every step of the way. What do you think you did well? What was the most surprising and challenging things, first of all, for the semester? I think just like being in this course at the same time that the 2020 elections was happening was like mind-boggling, because I think before this class I wouldn't have the language to even understand the language to express, but also like just the knowledge to even to completely comprehend what the 2020 election meant. But I think like when Trump really showed us how remarkably like unexceptional the United States is, and truly like how close we came to watching our democracy falter and fall. We had candidates nationwide who were refusing to accept the turnout of their own elections, and two, they verbally, unequivocally proclaimed that if they won, that they would anoint Trump to office regardless of the results of the 2020 elections. And yeah, I think what was most surprising was just like watching the United States democracy virtually at its breaking point, and watching that in real time. And yeah, I think just placing into context, like what was most surprising to me was just viewing the totality of how tenuous our democracy was and how it could have faltered if the 2020 elections went a different way. I think that was like really it was enlightening, and it was just incredibly eye-opening. And what readings did I find helpful? I think I found the Running on Radical Love in Turkey to be really interesting. One, the reading, and two, just the discussions we had in this class, which I think was expected. I think we had a very cautious take to this reading, and I think as people who are growing up in a world that's incredibly, like I think I mentioned in my discussion, at times pragmatic or at worst and really more often violent and callous. To imagine a love-oriented politics seems foolish, just because that's not the language of this world, and love seems really, I guess it seems really small and puny, and like it holds less power than the language and the manner in which our international relations and our countries and just the way in which we function as a society. But I think it really planted a seed in my mind, and I spoke about bell hooks too, but she speaks about a love ethos, like a love-oriented politics. Like we fail to imagine a world, a different reality, and to kind of, we fail to make it into reality, and we keep reproducing these systems of repression and oppression, and I really truly believe that, and I don't know how to create a love-oriented politics. I don't, but I know that it is like the world in which like I want to live in, and I really don't care how like unrealistic it is. I think, it's this reading kind of, it showed me that there is another way of operating in politics, and I'm incredibly thankful for that. And what is the last question? What do you think, sorry, I'm going to the two now, I skipped the question. But I think the transition to this in this class was really grand. I think at the beginning I was really scared to even, there were classes would go where I was just so scared to even speak, but then at the end I just felt like everything that I had to say was valued and was taken with care, and was reflected on, and you made steps to include me and others in the conversation, so just that transition into just like being really shy and unable to even like speak at times, and like to like participating like 4 or 3 times a class, I think was really, it was a grand transition, I'd say. And what do I think about the structure of the readings and assignments? I think the assignments, I think all the assignments and all the readings made it so I think it just created an incredibly knowledgeable curriculum, knowledge-filled pedagogy and curriculum, and I think I learned a lot about democracies and how they fall, but also like at the end I really appreciated how we kind of inserted readings on how we can be saved, because I think like that's also, without it I would have just really been pessimistic and felt powerless, but like we have agency, and there is, sorry, I'm going like way over time, but there is opportunity to legitimately have influence over the functions of our democracy, and whether it is sustained or whether it regresses. So I think kind of just opening my eyes to that agency we have and what forms it can take, I think was incredibly, it holds a lot of weight. And for the proposal and the panel presentations, I think on one hand I felt like the sequence of assignments each week felt a bit like, I think they took at times away from my ability to work on the paper, which I think was the reason why I really rushed it at the end. So I think maybe making those assignments do be a bit more spacious or do earlier in the semester, which I don't necessarily know how well that would function, but at the end it just felt like instead of using the time to focus on the essay, I was using it to focus on other assignments. But I'm sorry I went over time, but thank you so much, Shabnam. I really, again, like, I couldn't imagine a more knowledgeable course load, a more encouraging class, a more welcoming, dynamic, engaging course. So I'm so happy. Thank you so much. Thank you. Bye.